for ScriptCamp. My name is Conor. I'm the teacher and CEO of ScriptCamp, and we run about 3 boot camps a week that take you from idea all the way to finished draft. Let me block out the really bright light here so it's not quite as bright. Whoop, like that, maybe, hopefully. Don't want too much glare. Okay, so in this course, we're going to take a finished script that you have, and by the end of it, which is just 4 class meetings, you will have a better draft. It may not be perfect still, and obviously a lot of the time we're going to have to be writing a lot of drafts in order to produce content that is as high quality as we need it to be. But you got to start somewhere, and you got to, it's more important than having an amazing draft is building the skills and kind of establishing the toolbox that you will use to revise in the future. So this isn't as much about having a fantastic script at the end as it is about learning to revise and how to organize revision and take it, piece by piece and separate it into manageable chunks that will allow you to get through the entire story in a way that is not chaotic and is not confusing, and it's just you go step by step through it until you have an improved draft from before. So thanks for being here. Let's take a look at our slideshow for today, and we'll see a couple things that we can start with. Of course, we've always got these audio troubleshooting pages, so feel free to just browse through these if you're not sure how to speak to us or you can't hear us. If you are watching on one of our many streams, make sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons. But also, you can join us on Discord, and then you can actually participate in more of these ScriptCamp type classes and programs. We have lots of free events. This right here is a paid class for members, but you can always sign up for a free trial and get 2 weeks free. We're a screenwriting community that is focused on helping you get from concept to first draft of a polished script, but then we have other additional programs like this where we will help you sort of learn to fix and update and revise those scripts. We have lots of free classes, events, and workshops, and sub-paid, these VIP member classes, boot camps, and Writer's Lab. So what are these boot camps? Well, we go from, in this one, we go from rough draft to polished rewrite. In the other ones, we go from idea to first draft of a pilot or TV episode, using this very step-by-step practical method in these 2-hour weekly meetings. 4 weeks for the rewrite camp, 6 weeks for TV, and 8 weeks for the feature. So let's look at the schedule. So week 1 is all about giving and taking notes, which is such a huge part of screenwriting. And unless you are able to kind of gracefully both take and interpret feedback and do so with politeness and understanding that you will take some pieces of the notes you get and maybe not others, but still being cool about it, is a huge part of this job, whether you're doing TV, features, anything, but especially TV, which is just intensely collaborative at every stage. And the ability to kind of give notes as well, not just assessing what are the problems in an idea or a story or even a line of dialogue as you hear them, but being able to comment on those in a way that comes with actionable and constructive advice for the person whose work you are responding to. Obviously, you don't have to fix it for them. You just have to identify where there are problems. And remember that anytime someone does start to make notes and identify what's wrong in your work or what they think you should do to fix it, anytime they are assessing something as a problem, they're almost always right. But anytime they give you a specific solution, they're often wrong. So it might be up to you to sort of get looking between the lines or behind the note to understand the note behind the note and see what actual problem is that person identifying. Less so, what should I specifically do to fix it? That's something you have to work out on your own. Okay, so giving and taking notes and the big re-outline. The re-outline is a big part of the process of rewriting that we teach on ScriptCamp, which is where you will need to make a completely new outline that reflects the script as you currently have it, with the warts and all. So not the script, not the version that you wanted to have at the beginning, and not the changes that you intend to make. But this is just a snapshot of the draft that you have, with a bullet point for each scene. This is going to be really essential moving forward because you need to be able to picture the version of the story that you have in between 1 and 3 pages. You're going to read other student scripts and provide feedback in this class, so that's why we're going to separate into groups. And then within those groups, you're going to have people that you need to give feedback on, and you're going to look at the kind of commonalities between the notes that you receive, look for where they match up or where multiple different readers are identifying the same problem. So I'm dog sitting for a large boxer. You might hear him drinking water in the background in a very yucky way. That's okay. You can do that, buddy. So week 2 will be about the revision guide, which is where we will take those notes that you've gotten and you're going to smash that document together with the revision guide that with the re-outline that you've made in order to create this kind of detailed chronological roadmap of your revision from beginning to end. And we'll talk about how to fix gaps and holes in the structure and pacing, and making sure that you're getting all that down at the pre-writing stage before you actually go to pages. And your goal for the second week is to finish creating this revision guide, which is going to be like the re-outlined version of your script with all the changes that you need to make laid out in there. Week 3 will be about passes for character dialogue and action and things like that. So that's when you take one full edit through the script for just to focus on one of these elements, anything that still needs work or is not finished in the script, maybe one character's dialogue, or maybe all dialogue, maybe all the action scenes, whatever it is that still needs more work. You're going to go through and just focus on one thing at a time and do as many passes as you need to until the new draft is done. And then on week 4, it's all about polish and nailing the tone and making sure that everything is feeling kind of cohesive and there's no placeholders left and there's no gaps still empty. And you'll do any more extra passes that you need to that week. And you'll have up until the week so you will have the following week that is after that class meeting in order to finish the script as well. So really, this is kind of like 5 weeks. Okay, and altogether, the rewrite will be done by March 5th. Any questions so far? Let's bring up the chat here. And this is I will need a new secret code for the chat on this one, Nacho. But if you are... Oh, we have a few more folks joining. Welcome, guys. We are just finishing the introduction to this Rewrite Camp Week 1 class. So let's see. Do we have any questions so far? Feel free to either unmute or ask in the chat. Looks like no questions. Okay, and I'll get the new chat up from this current server in just a minute. Let me take it off for now. There we go. Okay, so if you've not yet enrolled, make sure to go to scriptcamp.net/classes, and you can either buy this course on its own, or you can sign up to be an unlimited member, which gives you access to every boot camp we do, every event we do, all the labs, any upcoming courses that we haven't even started yet. We're adding a playwriting boot camp early next month. We have pilot feature. Any of these events are just completely open to you if you subscribe for our middle option. So if you've not already done so, now is a good time to get on that. You can also they do come with a free trial for 2 weeks of free classes, so you can cancel anytime before then. Here's just a breakdown of our different membership level options. You can review that on your own, or go to our website, just scriptcamp.net/membership, and review that. Okay, let's look at week 1. So we do have to go over your rewrite goals and making sure that you are approaching the rewrite with the right kind of goals in mind, taking stock of what you have, assessing the flaws honestly, and noting areas that you think need improvement, and just making sure that you've made any last changes to make this as readable as possible for 2 other people, because remember that it's a lot to ask someone to read a script, and it's a lot of energy and time to put into it, especially if they're trying to critically analyze it to help you make it as good as it can be. And as a result, you have to make sure that you're not giving people just broken messes of scripts whenever possible. I mean, if there's a few, obviously we're expecting there to be problems with the story, or you wouldn't be doing a rewrite at all. But you should go the extra mile and look at your spelling and grammar and everything. And if there's any placeholders or any, like XXX this happens, I don't know, left in the script, any of those sort of like incomplete scenes, then you need to go through and put something there, even if it's not great, because you need to be giving the most complete, most readable, and best version of the document possible, even to your early readers, out of just courtesy to them. We'll look at some ground rules before we begin, and like things to know and to be able to set your expectations properly. We'll go a little bit into how to be a feature or TV writer, but that's not really the focus of this course necessarily. But just remember that to do either of those things requires the ability to execute rewrites on a quick time frame and with a high level of quality, which requires you to have some kind of process for doing so. So you need to actually be able to have a way worked out that you personally approach rewrites. You can see what works in this course for you, and maybe some things will work and some things won't, and you can always be modifying and changing and applying your own fine-tuning your own method as you go on. But you've got to have some kind of process for this. You can't just wing it every time. We'll look at steps for the rewrites and how doing rewrites for yourself is different than doing rewrites for producers, which is sort of a whole separate can of worms and like a separate job. But it's a big part of how screenwriters make money and just kind of get by in the business is by doing rewrites and polishes for sometimes WGA level scripts, sometimes non-WGA indie small production companies, writer-directors, things like that. We will talk about how to read and analyze scripts, and we have a coverage guide that we'll look at a little bit today which is the Verve coverage guide from that management company that has a lot of really good tips and things to look at. We'll look at the re-outline, which we talked about a little bit, but we need to make sure to nail down how to get that done. The notes document is going to be where you're going to be aggregating all the notes from your different readers. Towards the end, we'll be posting loglines and assigning groups of the people who have showed up to see if we can organize into these trios so that everyone's getting 2 sets of feedback and giving 2 sets of feedback. These scripts can be of any length, so you may not, and often you won't even be reading full features. These will be for shorter things like pilots or sometimes even shorts or things like that. And then at the end, we will have just a basic homework assignment, which is going to be like work on this re-outline and read a proscript. That's always going to be our quote homework at ScriptCamp is never like fill out these questions. It's going to be like just read and write, basically. Okay, so any questions before we get into today's class? While I'm waiting, I will put up the new chat. Okay, that should do it. There we go. Rewrite chat. Look at that. That's great. Okay. So, any questions? Looks like perhaps not. Okay, we will keep going then. Let's take a look at this next slide here. So let's just go down and have everyone tell us what rewrite project that you'll be working on in the class. Is this like a brand new thing? Or have you rewritten this multiple times before? How did you go about those, and what challenges were you running into? What problems were you encountering? And what do you want to improve on? All of that. So let's begin. Let's just go down our list here. Let's start with Amy.
Hello, everyone. I will be rewriting my first rough draft.
Are you guys hearing Amy?
Can you hear me?
I hear just fine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe it's me who can't hear anyone.
Oh.
Let me disconnect and reconnect really quick. Sorry about this. Test?
Yes.
Okay. I think... Oh, gosh. Am I still streaming? Yeah, I think I am. Okay, I'm going to have to rejoin the boot camp here. Let's see if I can hear people now. No.
Hello? Can you hear
still
me now?
Can't. Sorry about this. Sometimes we get these
Can you hear us?
technical difficulties. I'm going to go to voice and video and check my output device is set to default. And I should be able to hear now. That's
Hi, Connor.
strange
Can
that
you
I
hear me?
can't. Oh, wait. I think my computer's just muted. Let's try it now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that. That was dumb.
Okay.
So let's start with Amy. Tell us about your rewrite project. What stage are you at? What problems are you having? Go ahead.
I'm at the very... Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm at the very beginning stage. It's a very rough draft. That's probably... That is a few pages shy of what it should be, which is the TV pilot. I'm at 23 pages. It should be around 30 pages. And called Opal's Odyssey. And I am looking to, everything, make it better in every way, structurally, dialogue, characters, world building, getting the pace and the tone right. It's a comedy, adventure, fantasy type pilot. So working on pretty much everything is what I'm looking to do to improve.
Okay, great. So this is just a relatively newer project for you, right? You wrote this as part of the TV bootcamp early last year? Or late last year?
So, I've only worked on it for about a month and a half, and not the entire month and a half because my job was really demanding at the time. So So yeah, it's pretty fresh and pretty new, but I want to move forward with it as much as possible.
Okay, great. And I think that as a fantasy sort of comedy, I think there's a few other readers in this group that would be glad to do that.
Good.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Let's keep going. Let's talk to Andrew.
Hi, class. I am, for this session, I will be doing a rewrite of a 30-minute sitcom called Melrose Do It Yourself. This will be the second rewrite, and so far I really like what I'm seeing, and I've gotten some great feedback from Conor and from other ScriptCamp boot campers about what needs to be done with this pilot. And hopefully in the next few weeks I'll wrap this up and have something I'm really satisfied with.
All right, and what specifically are you looking to improve in this one, would you say?
I'm looking to improve relationships, relationship arc between the two main characters, and scene structure. The scenes, I have a very long third scene and a very short first two acts. So I'll be looking to make the three acts of the same size.
Gotcha. Okay, so I would, while the rest of the students are listening and people are describing the kinds of things the kind of work that they would want to do, just be sort of listening for the kind of stuff that you consider to be your strengths. So if you're like, oh, I'm very good at structure, then maybe you're like, oh, that would be a good one for me to read or a good group to be in. Just things to pay attention to. All right, thanks, Andrew.
Sure.
Let's keep going. Jason.
So I have a horror occult feature that's currently in its third draft, and I'm just looking for some feedback on kind of where it is, because it's seen some pretty significant changes. I guess the major thing is I'm on the border on potentially changing the main character and kind of rewriting it to be from a different point of view. And I'm mainly just curious what people's thoughts are of the script as it is now, and maybe having that open conversation about potentially what it would look like in that other form.
Okay, so you're saying you're not quite sure exactly what needs to change or how to improve it, except you have some ideas on maybe swapping around the perspective or the POV to shake things up?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really had anyone look at it yet, so it's more just I kind of want those fresh eyes just to know where it is, considering I probably changed 30% of the script between the last draft and this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and which draft is this, would you say?
This would be the third draft.
Third, got it. Okay. So yeah, it's good to come to these with something that's not your very first draft, because if you've done a couple in the past, then maybe you'll have a little bit clearer of an idea of what to focus on. So that all sounds great. Thank you, Jason. And Nacho, you are moving on from rewrites into doing a new feature, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be doing the rewrite of voices in this one. So
Oh, you are doing another rewrite. Okay, great.
yeah, yeah. So I did, I kind of sat in on the last rewrite class, and I just kind of like continued working. It's a script I wrote last July, and felt like it needed some significant changes. So, hopefully, we'll see how it goes. But I'll be looking forward to getting some feedback and participating in the rewrite class.
Yeah, so as a horror thriller, maybe you and Jason would be. Did you and Jason swap notes before? I can't remember.
I haven't I read Jason's, but no one has read mine yet. I haven't shared mine yet.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, if you're looking for feedback partner, it's a similar kind of genre. I'm sure that he would enjoy that kind of thing.
also
It's
about
also a similar topic.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. It's also about babies and demons and stuff, huh?
yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. More common ground for you guys to to share together, and more crossover between the two stories. Not a bad thing. Thanks, Nacho. And how about Zaza? Are you here, Zaza? You are unmute, just so you know.
Are you able to unmute? Do you see the button for mute, Zaza?
Or you can type in the chat if you want. So it's the microphone icon in the very bottom left of the screen next to your name.
There we go.
There you go.
You guys hear me now?
Oh, we hear you fine? Yep.
All right, sorry about that. I switched to a different mic. Technological problems out the ass. Sorry
You're good,
about
no worries.
that. So I have a story that I've worked on for a while now. It's taken some different forms. Most recently, it was this sitcom, supernatural sitcom that I've talked about in some other classes. So I've got the world, I've got the characters, and I'm working on making it as presentable and sellable as possible, finding its best form. It also deals with demons and family troubles. So,
well, you're in good company.
That I could be friends with you guys.
Yeah, that's great. You're in the right place. And you said you've been working on this for a while. So what draft would you say that this is?
Draft is difficult to say. The very first iteration of the story was actually a novel, the first novel that I wrote like 10 some odd years ago. And I wrote a bunch of episodes, 30 plus episodes, just to get used to script writing as opposed to novel writing, for what is supposed to be a series that takes place same universe, different time. And this one is technically a spin-off that has now been spun off again. So for the actual project I'm working on, it's maybe just a third draft, but it's been in the works for a little while.
Okay, yeah, well, quite a history there.
Yeah.
So yeah, normally we in our other bootcamp programs we say it's not best to come to those with a like an idea that you've had for a long time. You should come with the newer, fresher ideas. But for the rewrite course, I would say that it is much more of it's like a fine way to go about it. You can take something you've been working on for a while, and just as long as you're ready to still make big changes if you need to, then you'll be just fine, and you should do well just following along with the program. So thanks for joining. This is your first ScriptCamp program too, right?
It is. I have taken part in some of the logline courses and just that introductory. I'm relatively new to the server, but I'm really excited to meet other people with fresh ideas and get this to where it needs to be.
Great. Awesome. Well, we'll hope that you can do that here. Thanks for chiming in. And I think that's going to be all of our students in the room for now. So we're going to try to make groups out of these students here. If you are watching or listening and you want to join this course, you can do so. Go to scriptcamp.net. You'll have to join our Discord server. But this is going on. You know, these happen once a week on Saturdays from 12 to 2 is when we do these rewrite courses, and this is going to be everything is in Pacific time. And then later today we also have a lab from 4 to 6 Pacific, which is kind of like office hours that you can come in with any specific story issues that you're having, obstacles that you're encountering in your script, or things that you just want to hear more or learn more about. Okay, great. Let's keep going through this slideshow. So remember, rewrite in 4 weeks, or kind of like 5, but 4 class meetings. Will this draft be good? Maybe. It will be in better shape, but it being good is not, again, really the point. Any one script being like, you can't hitch your wagon too heavily to any one script. Does that phrase make any sense? You can't hitch too many wagons to one script? How would you say that? Anyway, you get the idea. Like, you can't count on one script to get you any tangible result ever. The only way to kind of move forward with this is by shedding the idea that any individual script needs to be, quote, good, and realizing that this is like hard work. You need to untether yourself from your ideas as a screenwriter to some extent. They're almost never going to manifest exactly like you want them to. This is not like being a novelist where you are the god of this story. Your voice is one amongst many when it comes to screenwriting TV or movies, especially TV. And even in the best case scenario, your idea will sort of be bought, developed, maybe rewritten by you or maybe by other people, and then directed, which will change it even more, and maybe the actors will change it some, and like by the end, you may or may not recognize it as your original story, and that's just like the ownership of stories is in terms of screenwriting is very minimal, and these aren't even considered legally really works of art. These are considered like a blueprint for a final artistic product, sort of thing. So just separate yourself from your ideas. Remember that your job is to become a generator of unlimited ideas, and no idea is so good that you should get hung up on it for a super long time. And you need to just develop the skills necessary to execute new, consistent ideas on a quick time frame within 8 to 12 weeks and with a high level of quality. So this is not intended to get you a script that will go anywhere, get you anything, or like get you a job, get you meetings, anything like that. It takes many years of writing scripts to get to the level where someone might even consider any of those things. So this is all part of practice. ScriptCamp is not like a guru course designed to help you write one amazing script. It is like a gym that you go to improve your skills. So this is work. This takes a long time. No one starts out good at it. If you're spending more than 6 months on a script, generally it would mean that you would need to change up your process, unless it's the kind of thing where it's like an idea that you've had cooking in the background for like a long time and you just work on it like sporadically here and there. But like typically you should be setting aside a block of time, like 6 weeks, for example, to write I would say 8 weeks for a feature is like a safe spot for the most part, 10 weeks at the most, to just be working on nothing but that, and ideally not be working on more than one script at a time. It's really kind of your job to write these many bad scripts in order to eventually get to the good ones. And rewriting is really essential for just being a screenwriter in the first place, especially for features. You have to get really good at writing movies. Then actually step 2 is go back and really do step 1, because that's about the time where most people start. Once most people start to think they are getting pretty good, then the next step up is to go back and start actually revising those scripts. Like for a long time, I wasn't revising anything. I just wanted to move on to the next idea. And many people are kind of the same way. I kind of hate revising myself, but like it is really the barrier that will take you over that one, from the one like arena of skill level to the next one, is the ability to then look at the older stuff and realize the flaws and problems in it and just improve it either on your own or with feedback from other people, but ideally first one, then the other, right? So you really need to do steps 1 and 2. And in order to do them, you need to get good at rewriting your own stuff as well as just writing new ideas. You're then going to make a portfolio of 3 to 5 riveting and undeniably amazing scripts, which is going to take much more than writing 3 to 5 of them. It's going to take, writing probably 15 to 25 scripts before you can narrow that down to just the ones that you would consider part of your sort of core portfolio, which is what, the scripts that you are currently sending around or sending to people that have not kind of used up all of their usefulness yet. Once they've gone around a bunch, like you've gone around the contests and you've placed in a few contests and maybe gotten a few meetings out of it, usually a script has kind of worn out its usefulness. And until somebody expresses interest in, I don't know, making it or something, there's not a ton more you can do with it. So you're going to try to build a core portfolio of 3, let's just say 3 scripts that are excellent on every level. And if somebody reads one and really likes it and they say, do you have more? You can send them 2 others of the same quality and of sort of similar genres. It will really help you. So you're then going to get repped by a manager, which means you have to place highly in contests and fellowships, network extensively, and just really get to know people, especially at the assistant level in Hollywood. It means you probably have to live in LA. And just query a little bit. But querying will get you better results if in the subject line you say, hey, this script placed in the top 10 of this big important contest. Of which there are like 4 or 5 actual big important contests. The rest of them are pretty much negligible and won't even get you reads by mentioning that you even that you won them. Once you get a manager, which takes many years, you will try to get a writing assignment, possibly pitching on these with contacts that they have, or you might work with them to develop a spec that they can take out, which means you have to sort of just do whatever they say and make whatever changes they like and just write the script that they want, more or less. You don't have much of a voice here. You can argue for yourself a little bit, but mostly it's just a case of just do whatever they say just to get them to take it out, or else you're going to make your life hell. It takes forever, and it's really hard. Then you're going to, based on that script, you're going to take general meetings, which are sort of like meet and greets at production companies and places like that, and then specific meetings on one script if somebody is interested in maybe setting it up with that production company. At which point they still probably won't pay you, but you will work with producers or other players to develop that spec or assignment even more. You will rewrite a lot and do tons of free work, and they will not pay you for almost anything until it's like packaged and then sold. So you probably need a day job. And then you do the preceding 2 steps like 500 times as different projects sort of fall apart. And then you finally, I haven't even done this, but you sell a feature, join the Writers Guild, and party until your inevitable death. So writing TV is a little bit more circuitous, and there's many different ways into it. One of them is by starting as a production assistant or you start as an office PA. Do that for a few years until you can express interest in get a promotion into writer's PA, at which point you might move up to writer's assistant or showrunner's assistant, or one and then the other. This really is easier if you live in LA. If you don't, then it's during COVID time, it's possible that you might be able to do this more remotely, as more rooms are working remote, but I think the trend will be over time. They're drifting back to doing this all in person. So working through the assistant track takes many years and a lot of taking crap and sucking it up. And I am terrible at these things, and I am not an assistant myself. I've tried it a few times and was miserable at it, so I'm not really going to be able to help too much with this method, but we do have a couple other hosts that sometimes teach classes here that might be able to answer more questions about this. The other track to get into TV writing is just to get obscenely good at writing pilots, of course, as number one, but also other stuff, which, sometimes showrunners are looking to read plays or watch stand-up, especially if they're sort of in the comedy writing. If they're looking for, to staff a comedy show, they might be watching stand-up or web series or YouTube shorts or sketches or things like that. So anything else that you can use to sort of build out your portfolio or get attention or stand out. But then at the end of all that, you have to be a phenomenal TV writer and have to have great pilots. And then you will get a manager in the same sort of ways that we've been talking about: contests, fellowships, accolades, networking, and have your manager submit your portfolio during I did probably one pilot during staffing season. They will then get you showrunner meetings, and then you have to nail those meetings, and then in theory you could be staffed as a junior writer, or like a staff level writer on a TV show without having been an assistant first. So those are the 2 sort of main ways. But why is this so difficult to get, especially those first 2 steps, which are get really good at writing scripts, and then step 2 being go back and actually get really, really good at writing scripts and rewriting them? It's tough for a bunch of reasons. The main one being that getting good feedback is just hard, because most of the time, the kind of person that could actually respond meaningfully and break down and analyze the story and quickly ascertain what the problems are and give you good, strong, actionable advice to fixing it, those people do that kind of stuff for a living and are not that open to doing more of the work they do all day in their off time. And it's kind of asking them a lot to say, hey, I'm asking you to do your job when you're not at your job just as a favor to me, and if my work isn't that good, you're going to have to suffer through all those pages of mediocrity. That's a lot to ask someone, or that's at least what they're hearing in their head as you're suggesting, hey, would you mind reading my script? That's actually a big question. And it takes, in theory, multiple hours to read something and maybe mark it up or give you actionable advice on what to do next. And it's difficult to gauge where your skill level is and where it needs to be. A script is a really long document. I know all the novelists are laughing at me because they're like, a script isn't a long document at all. But, a 100-page plus story is kind of a long document, and it's difficult to discern a script's quality through just a cursory glance through it, because all scripts sort of look, for the most part, the same on the page. I know there are exceptions to this, and some people's work looks totally different, but there's one format that you can use, and it's all going to kind of, like, people who read a lot of these, it all starts to blend together after a while, and, it takes a bit of experience and work to be able to stand out, so that right away they can tell that you know what you're doing. Because, imagine you sit and listen to 100 people play 30 seconds of guitar, you're going to be able to almost instantly tell, oh, who's amazing at this within the first 5 seconds, I would say. So pretty much right away, if you do this, if you do nothing but listen to this, or nothing but read scripts, for instance, then after the first 3 pages, almost always you can tell, am I in for a solid ride? Am I in good hands? Or am I going to hate my life for the next 20 minutes? And at what point can I start skimming or skipping through this so that I don't have to pay attention anymore? So those are all just things to be worried about. It says the Discord students can't see me. Oh, that's okay. Let me just share the screen because I left the server and then rejoined, and that's why I did that. So there you go. You should be able to see it now. So let's keep going. People have a wide spectrum of reactions to even highly praised scripts. I think it's worth noting that you can go to, Amazon and sort by the reviews of your favorite movie, and you'll see the bunch of people really absolutely think it's garbage, irredeemably terrible. And that goes to work that people who read for a living, people who are readers, either for a living or maybe they're just an intern reading as they try to work up at a management company or something like that. Like, they have their own taste, and they have things that they like and things that they don't. So you're always going to be playing the numbers game and playing the luck game a little bit, trying to find a reader that likes your stuff. Which is not to say that you can't discern quality even if it's not necessarily for you. But you quality isn't inherently objective either. Some people will think that a movie is objectively good, and some will say, no, that's objectively bad. But in truth, it is all pretty much subjective. There are some hard and fast scripts that you can look at and be like, oh, no, that's clearly better than that other one. But a lot of the time, you can't count on that. You can't count on all readers having the same opinions. People who don't read scripts usually just sort of want to support you and tell you, good job, you did it, which is to say that they don't really know what to look for or how to analyze a story. Whereas people who do have those skills and are good at this will often charge money for coverage, like myself included. Or, if it's a writer's group you're looking for, those can be hard to find and keep going. But why would you want to write a screenplay? Here's a couple reasons. Well, you want to be a professional writer. You want to just practice and get more skilled at this craft. You want to direct movies yourself? That's potentially possible. You won't probably be able to direct TV episodes yourself or pilots yourself, but if you want to be a writer-director, this is an okay place to be. You want to write this as just a hobby for personal enjoyment. Those are really the sort of reasons why you would do this, despite the fact that it's very difficult, and almost all, 20% of ScriptCamp courses are just saying, this is really hard. Are you sure you want to do this? But remember that a bricklayer making a road does not care whether any individual brick is even particularly good. They just have to put the bricks down. Okay, so let's look at the basics of the rewrite course. Sorry, my slideshow sometimes glitches out between slides, so I have to sort of reset it like this. So we will start with we discussed a little bit, but we will start with the re-outline, which is going to be something that you're going to try to get down for next class meeting, and that means you're going to have to take the version of the script that you have and make an outline that reflects that. So bullet point or, dash for every scene with a sentence or two that describes what happens in that scene, every single scene. Next, you're going to get your notes and feedback and also give notes and feedback to your other two group members, and you're going to collect that all into one document. Now, if the students are submitting you written notes, which they should be, if they are, then it should be between 1 and 3 pages. If they are giving you verbal notes, which you can choose what you want to do, some people are better at one or the other, then if they're giving you verbal notes on a phone call or something, then you should be typing these things up yourself, and it should equal up to about a page to 3 pages. And then from there, you're going to combine those into the revision guide and move on to rewriting pages, and then move on to the extra passes. Any questions on anything we've talked about before we continue? Questions from anyone? Feel free to unmute or type in the chats. Okay, no questions. We'll keep going. So, what is it like to work with producers on paid rewrites? There's a question for you. So this is something that I do myself. I'm primarily, besides teaching classes here at ScriptCamp, I'm doing rewrites for writer-directors and small production companies who are looking for additional passes on mostly horror thriller type movies. These are non-WGA because I'm not in the guild yet. So that means that they can technically pay anything that they want, whatever you negotiate, but this is still contracted work. I mean, there is still a contract in place. There are steps for delivery, just like with a guild signatory type script. You will be sometimes it will be that you get certain percentages depending on which step you're on. So it'll be like 33% at the first draft, 33% at the second pass, and then 33% at the final. Usually with non-WGA lower budget sort of like production companies, it's just like you get it all up front, and then you just have to work with them for between 3 and 20 weeks, depending on how long it drags on for. You never really know exactly, like, the time. I would say time frames when it comes to feature films are much looser than you will assume that they are. It's not like, in the movies when there's a screenwriter and somebody's calling them like, I need that script on my desk by Monday morning or else you're fired off this production. That's actually, it's not as often, like, maybe I'm sure it gets like that at the higher levels of delivery, but like when you're kind of getting going or you're working with scripts in development, usually these they don't have solid deadlines on them. It's not like it needs to be done by this time, unless they've already secured funding and they have like actors they're going to lose if enough time goes by or something like that. But like, I've been surprised by how lax the deadlines actually are when it comes to working with producers. Even on rewrites, they'll be like, take a couple weeks if you need, take a month if you need. It's a little more like flexible than you would assume, but it does still require you to be really organized. And especially because if you're moving from rewriting primarily for yourself to rewriting for other people, it's actually a big gap in how it's like a large gulf to climb in how organized that you have to become, and how organized you have to learn to be, because you're keeping multiple people on track for a story that has possibly gone through years of changes and other, like, up to, I don't know, 5 other writers potentially. So those producers have probably been working on this thing for years, and they have seen like so many versions of this idea. And they may not remember exactly what happened in one draft versus the other draft versus the other draft, and they have like a kind of amorphous blob of the story in their heads, and you're coming to it for the first time, which means that you do have that nice approach of, you have like the freshest perspective here, so you can say like, oh, we clearly don't need 20 of these pages in the middle, and they'll be like, are you sure? And you'll be like, I'm sure, let me prove it to you. And they'll be like, I don't know. Then you give them the draft and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you were totally right, we had no idea. So like, you do have that benefit of the newer perspective that is going to be able to like, that's why they're bringing someone else in when they've had multiple writers before, is because they're looking for someone who's able to make bigger sweeping changes and make like omissions and edits and like rearrange scenes and combine scenes and highlight the emotional point of scenes. And all of this usually is in service of cutting down on pages. When you're doing these kind of rewrites that I do, a lot of this is reducing, because most scripts are in fact bloated and overwritten. It's not that they're underwritten, it's that there's too much and that it's unfocused, and you need to bring that level of clarity and precision and focus to the story, while also making sure that they know what you're changing at each stage. You're able to address the notes that they're giving you in such a way that it doesn't break anything. So you always have to be like deciding, what am I going to take from their notes? What am I going to have to just use my own vast level of experience to be able to improve this as much as possible? And where do I have to kind of like know that they've been with it for longer, so they have been down more roads than me. So they may have already tried certain stuff and they already know they don't like it. So you have that advantage of the newer perspective and the ability to see problems that they may not be able to see, or to see extraneous pieces of machinery that are not actually helping the gears turn. The disadvantage is that because, or like I should say, a difficulty is that working with producers who have been doing this for a long time on one story, like they will start to develop really specific, like allergies to certain plot elements and things, I guess I should say. So maybe, I don't know if that makes sense, but like I would describe this as, you're like, we need to cut half an hour out of the middle, and in order to do that, I'm going to change the wedding party scene into just a lunch scene. And then that'll save us all kinds of time. And then the producers might say, like, we've done 100 lunch scenes over 5 years. We're not doing another lunch scene. And you're like, but it won't be like the other ones that you've done. It will actually help. And they'll be like, doesn't matter, no lunch scenes. So like, they will have these kind of preconceptions or prejudices of like what story elements will work or not, based on things that have been tried before that you may not have even been privy to or seen or like known about. So like, it's tough, and you're just trying to please them, really. You're working for them. This is not your movie. In fact, at the end of the day, you might write like up to 15% of the movie, but you are like a mechanic who's being brought in to fix parts of a non-functioning machine. So it's not your machine, and your job is just to make whatever it takes to make those people who are paying you say, all right, good job, we're done. You need to just kind of do it. So you can weigh in as much as you want. You can make a case for certain stuff or argue, but like, don't argue too much, because this is a job you're being paid for. This is not your baby, it's theirs, and you need to do your best to show them that it's in the hands of someone who knows how to make those big changes if needed, but ultimately will step back and allow them to take the reins because it's their project. Okay, that was a lot of info. Any questions on working with producers on paid rewrites, or how to do rewrites for other people as opposed to just improving scripts on your own? Is anyone interested in doing this kind of work besides just writing your own scripts? Zaza says, work is work, whatever it takes to get in. Yep. Well, the thing is, with this kind of stuff, normally you have to already kind of sort of be in to get these to some extent. It's not like you don't really start with these. You would get these jobs if you have either if you have a manager already, it can be a little easier, or if you have enough impressive work out there that like a friend of yours that works with those producers could recommend you to them, and then they might read one of your other scripts to tell if you're the kind of person that they'd want to rewrite for them. But in order to do that, you have to have really good scripts first. So this is not exactly a way to break in. This is a way to make money and to get your name potentially on some scripts or on some movies once you have already sort of started to be in, if that makes sense. Not that there's a really clear definition of what breaking in means or like what that is. It's a very cloudy, murky process. And Nacho says definitely he would be interested in doing these as well. That's great. It would seem that... Is this actually streaming my correct window? Let me double check. No, it needs to be on this. There we go. Okay, so that's for the Discord people to see. Now you can actually look at our nice overlays and everything for this stream. So we're going to keep going. Let's flip the slide. Ground rules for Rewrite Bootcamp. So this needs to be ready to share for feedback by the end of today, because you want to make sure that your group members have enough time to read and respond to your script, especially if it's longer than half an hour. It might take a little while to read and to give you all the relevant notes that you need. And there's not a lot of time for this class. It's only a 4-week period. Get used to sharing this work with me and with fellow students and everyone, even at early stages. I know it can be difficult to hear big notes at early stages, but we're coming to rewrite something because we know it needs to be changed in some way. If it's perfect as it is, it does not need to be brought to a workshop like this. So also please use your real name in class instead of a username. I think everyone in our current class is already doing this, but just so everyone knows, for future reference, in ScriptCamp you will have to use your real name, or if you really don't want to use your real name for privacy reasons, your middle name, your nickname, something like that. Okay, so even if your script is not ready to share for feedback by the end of today, you can continue participating in this bootcamp just to kind of follow along and audit, I guess you would say, or whatever, but you will miss out on that feedback because we don't want to be giving incomplete, not polished drafts to our fellow students to read. That's just, disrespectful to them, and just out of courtesy, we need to make sure that something is done before we make someone else read it, even if our version of done is like not great. It's fine, but you can still follow along with the class and use these steps to learn how to revise, basically. Let's look at some discussion questions here. So, have you read lots of screenplays written by pro writers as well as aspiring writers? The answer should be yes. I am reading 3 of them a week. That's the technically right answer, but it's okay. You won't get kicked out of class or scolded if you're not, but that is the correct amount to be reading. You should be reading between 1 and 3 pro-written pilots or features every single week. They don't take more. They're meant to be read in one sitting, and they're sort of meant to evoke the experience of watching it just by reading it. So an hour-long script should take about an hour to read. Some people read faster and some slower, so maybe 2 hours to read an hour-long script, but it doesn't take all that long. And if you are taking a course like this, and if you're trying to improve as a writer, then you have the time to read. You need to read. Have you ever received helpful notes or particularly unhelpful notes? And what has been your process for analyzing scripts, whether it's your own or someone else's? So these are 3 sort of discussion questions. I'll just open it to the room. Who would like to weigh in on one or any of these?
I know that you kind of already said this, but whenever I get notes, I try to think of you basically said the same thing. In Neil Gaiman has a quote that's like, you always have to remember when people tell you that something doesn't work for them, that they're right. It doesn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is incredibly important information. But you also have to remember that when people tell you what they think is wrong and how you should fix it, they're always wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, like, it's tough to say anyone is always wrong, but it's pretty often that they are identifying that there is an issue, and no one's wrong when they say, I don't like something. You can't say, yes, you did like that.
Right.
Of course they didn't. But the ability to actually assess what needs to be done to fix that is a pretty advanced skill that not everyone has. And even people who do have that skill aren't always correct, or they don't always come up with something that will align with your sort of vision. So that's why you really have to start looking at the note behind the note. So if your script starts with a really long football game, and one of your readers comes back with, this was boring, I think you should cut all the football, then you might look at the script and say, oh no, the movie just takes too long to get going. I'll take that football game from the beginning and I'll move it to the middle instead. And now, hey, the problem is fixed, and you didn't even delete all the football scenes. You just addressed the thing that they were trying to get at by giving you that note. Have you found that to be part of your process as well, Jason, having to sort of look behind the note to see what to actually do?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly kind of what I'm looking for right now, is to just get some more sets of notes so I can kind of diagnose what I need to do, and whether it's, a new POV or just some other adjustments, which is why people are suggesting certain things.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to tell. There's not just one way to do this, or one way to fix any story. So you have to cut through the noise and just do this a lot, so that you get used to, just doing your best, trying to filter out the voices that don't matter and trying to find just the ones that do, and just trying to, at the end of the day, make it a version that you like better, even if it's not perfect. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else have a process that they use for analyzing a script?
Yeah, I kind of go through reading the script with like Evernote open, or some kind of like note document open while I'm reading. So I'm looking at kind of what are some overall notes that I'm starting to, think about, things that are kind of bigger picture, and also just things that I'm finding on each page, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm just kind of like have two lists going as I'm reading through the script. And I also found it helpful sometimes to kind of like maybe have a list of like the major like story beats, and just to kind of think about what seems like the inciting incident of this story, what seems like, the to break, just so that I don't know if it's not necessarily something that the writer may be interested in or not, but just kind of helps me to think about what does the structure of the story seem like. And sometimes I'll look at, maybe the writer has a logline, but it might, just having read it, it seems like actually a different logline would reflect the actual script that I just read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a big thing, where it seems like the story is unfocused because it's not delivering on the promises that have been set up by the title, logline, and just like synopsis or description. Or even the opening scenes sort of seem like they're implying a different movie than we end up getting. All these things are in service of making sure that the promises are being adequately fulfilled. Thanks, Nacho. Anyone else have a specific process they use to evaluate scripts?
I think Amy is having trouble accessing the stream. Is that right? Or were you able to get in?
Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. For some reason, it was working fine earlier, and then a few minutes ago, it just went gray and black, and I can't seem to, maybe it's some kind of weird glitch or connection issue, but yeah, I don't know why it's not working, but it's okay. I can hear your voices.
Okay. Yeah, you might just need to disconnect, then reconnect, maybe, if that helps. You can never really tell with these things. Let's look at the this coverage guide a little bit. So hopefully the rest of you guys can at least see there, or you can open this up on your own. I just dropped a PDF in the chat. So let's scroll down to page number 9 of the PDF. It's page 7 on the, in Adobe, type in 9 at the top and you will get to the right place. So this is going to be their guide on evaluating a screenplay and the different things to sort of look for and look at. And this is just like a broad overview of the major stuff. If you scroll down from this point on through the rest of the document, you'll get some really good tips. Would somebody like to read out what it says under the word premise? Anybody? I will call on someone to read.
I can't read your screen.
You can't read my screen. Okay,
Sorry,
can you just open the PDF that I linked in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do so.
Still trying to figure out a way to get this to zoom in more.
You can sort of make it smaller and zoom in the big red box, but you make the window much smaller so it's not full screen.
Oh, will that do it?
Yeah, so you make the PDF window like small and vertical.
Oh.
And then you make the big red box much bigger until it's just kind of fits exactly where you want it to be.
Okay.
And you change it to fit to width or something. Yeah, so you can actually see it on the.
I might have to figure this out outside of class. Let's just look at the
Yeah.
PDF together for now. Go ahead. Who's our reader? Was it Jason?
I can go for it.
Ahead,
And you
Jason.
said you want a premise on the PDF?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, premise. The premise is the core concept of a story. It should be interesting and relatable on a primal level to the greatest number of people regardless of time period or culture. Consider the following. How compelling is the core concept of the story? Is the core concept universal? Is the core concept immediately apparent? Can the core concept be quickly discerned and concisely summarized in an engaging logline? Do the subplots work to either reinforce or counterpoint the premise or theme of the story? Does the script stray away from the core concept with way too many themes? Does the script explore the premise to its full potential?
All right. Thank you for that. So yeah, these are all important things to look at. What might it mean asking if the core concept is universal? Anyone?
Is it something that the average viewer or in-average viewer will find some way to relate to?
Yeah, which means that obviously it doesn't have to be something that we've all lived through before or a world that we've all been to or anything like that, but just very basically that the people in the story that we are following, they want something that we can understand wanting, or that we might also ourselves kind of want, even if they're going about getting it in a way that we would never do or a way that is beyond our abilities. So that's a big part of what just makes storytelling appealing, is that we're watching people try to get stuff that we want, but they're doing it in ways that are either impossible or just more awesome than we would ever be capable of. Let's have somebody read the next section down for originality. I might just make Jason do it if no one else volunteers.
I can do it.
Thanks, Amy. All right, go ahead.
Originality. A screenplay need not be completely original, but there should be something original about the story. It shouldn't feel as though you've seen it before. Consider the following. Does the script present the audience with a brand new idea, perspective, or experience? Does the core concept have a unique hook, something we have not seen before? Does the script provide the audience with an experience they can't get from real life or never imagine they could get from real life? If the script follows established conventions, does it add something new to the genre? Are the story and characters formulaic? Are they predictable? Is the script riddled with cliches?
Thank you for that. So these are
You're
good
welcome.
things to also look at. What do we mean here by new idea, perspective, or experience, Amy?
Mute. New idea or perspective. I guess, trying to think of an example. the movie Roma that came out a few years ago. Before, we had never seen a story told through the eyes of the help before that, in such a personal way, such an intimate way. And it was maybe not such a unique story, but the perspective made it really interesting. So seeing it from,
that's a good example of how you can take a story that maybe we have seen it before, maybe we haven't, but you're looking at it through the eyes of someone that is not commonly explored as a main character. So let's take something like, how about a World War II movie, right? A World War II action drama kind of thing, like Saving Private Ryan. What's a perspective or POV we've never gotten in a movie like that before? Who could our hero be? That is something children. Sorry, say that again.
Do it like Cars, so it's like an animated from the perspective of the vehicles. I don't know.
Cars Call of Duty edition. Oh my god, that would be
exactly.
So it's like a bunch of jeeps and tanks, like fighting other kind of jeeps and tanks and planes and stuff, and they like. Exactly. Oh my god, that's a great idea. It's so silly, but yeah, that's a new perspective that I've never seen take on that story. Is that a take you want to do? Probably not. But no. maybe that could be like a comedy or something. It's like
dark comedy. Yeah. I feel like it would be in the vein of like a Sausage Party.
Yeah, maybe kind of an Adult Swim sort of vibe on this, and it's about like a Jeep, an American Jeep that's missing a wheel that makes friends with like a German U-boat or something like that, and they decide to be friends. Look, you can do that. Yeah, sure. Good example. So yeah, always be looking at what are some sort of new points of view that will rejuvenate these stories and add new life to them, even if at first glance we're like, I think I've seen this before. Just making it through someone else's eyes can just add so much to it and make it feel so much more worthwhile. Let's read this next part on structure. Jason, you want to take this one? We'll just swap between Jason and Amy.
Sure. Structure. The structure refers to the three-act structure as outlined by Christopher Vogler, Sid Field, Blake Snyder, Robert McKee, and Joseph Campbell. The three-act structure basically states that every story can be broken down into 3 parts, a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you're not familiar with the conventional three-act structure, please go to the library and acquire The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. The following are the major...
Just saying, by the way. But go ahead.
The following are the major plot points that occur within the three-act structure. These are only the major plot points. In addition to these, all scripts should contain other high and low points.
Okay, you don't have to read all this. But we should all be familiar with 3-act structure and how this breaks down and what kind of page number benchmarks these different beats are usually falling on. It's not to say that's some sort of rigid manacles saying this, your inciting incident has to always be on page 10. That's not necessarily true, but a lot of the time the trend is nowadays that it will be between pages 10 and 15, so you should know that. And if you're not doing that, then you need to know that you are not doing that, and you are deliberately sidestepping that expectation for some kind of point, for some kind of effect. You shouldn't just break rules and do whatever you want just because, like, you can. You should know what the rules and expectations, or, you know, the quote rules and expectations are. Obviously, blah, blah, blah. There's no rules. Everyone can do this however they want. But, like, not really. I mean, there's, you kind of need to know what the expectations are. And you need to know what readers are used to, because that affects how they will be reading what you've given them. And when it comes to other amateur writers, maybe they don't have as many expectations as like a studio reader would, or you know, an intern that reads for a manager or somebody like that would, an assistant. But like, you should still familiarize yourself with what readers are seeing a lot of, what their expectations will be for where certain moments will be going, or the kinds of plot developments we'll be seeing in different parts of the story. You should like get to know the 3-act structure really, 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 really like the back of your hand. And broadly, that is going to encompass the characters in the first act. That's going to be your setup, where we meet your character in their pre-existing life. We have some kind of inciting incident that unveils a kind of doorway to them that seems to be locked, but on the other side is something very tempting or very intriguing, or a challenge perhaps, or something that they're unfamiliar with or unaccustomed to, or just some other world that they could in theory enter. The situation that they're in is going to continue to add pressure to them until they're forced to try the different locks on that door and realize that over time the room they're in is getting hotter and the pressure is getting more intense, and their desire for change overcomes their fear of whatever that threshold is, and they step through that threshold into your second act, at which point we make our way into the premise scenes, which are the core kind of promise of the entire story. Stuff that you saw in the trailer or on the poster, or the title might be, if it's a movie called Alien Killers, what do we expect to see in the premise scenes of the second act?
Aliens getting killed?
Yeah, I would say so. So that's, or at least people trying to kill aliens. But like that kind of action, like whatever the movie, whatever you have promised and whatever you have told us is coming, this is where it kind of goes. Even though it can always be something different than, like, it should play out differently than how we thought it would go for the most part. And like, we're always going for this sense of, you know, we're building towards this surprising yet inevitable ending, meaning that there has to be some sense that we can predict where things are going. Nothing should be coming out of completely left field, but we might be surprised by like the intensity of the emotion when we get to that moment, or there might be some elements that bring that like tilt the balance a little more surprising and a little less inevitable, something like that. But there needs to be like an element of both as far as where the story is ultimately going. So in the second act, we do these premise scenes. We get to the midpoint, which is often going to be some big escalation of stakes, or sometimes this can be some new clue or some new revelation or reversal or something like that. I mean, I just always say this should raise the stakes. Anything else you do with this is up to you. Then we will have that all is lost moment where things get worse and worse for your main character until it seems like they have either failed at their goal or they are on the verge of failing at their goal. That is followed by the break into three, where your main character will have some kind of one last chance to take a final swing at the bad guys, where they will remember something they've learned over the course of this journey, or they will re-encounter some ally that they have been working with or that they met earlier, or just basically something as a result of the journey that they've gone on, which allows them to, you know, summon the last dregs of their strength and take one last attempt to defeat the villain. At which point we break into three for the slow progression, or for the, you know, the ramp up until the finale, the climax, and then you have like a few pages to wrap things up. In a movie, remember, after the climax, you have to like keep the energy up in a movie to the extent that you don't nowadays get that many more pages after the finale is done to wrap things up. The audience is going to start like checking their watches pretty fast. So try to wrap things up in like 5-ish pages if you can. Less than 10, I would say, after the climax is when you should almost always be cutting off. But you have a little room for, you know, an epilogue or denouement or something. So, let's look at the top of page 11 on this PDF, the Verve coverage guide. And can somebody, who was I swapping to? Was it Amy for this next one? Can you consider the following in terms of structure at the top of page 11 here?
Sure, no problem. Structure continued. Considering the following. How well does the screenplay fit into the 3-act structure? If it does not fit into the 3-act structure, does it still have a well-defined structure of its own? Is the core concept defined within the first quarter of the script? Is the inciting incident discernible, or does it make sense? Are there plot points that are missing, ineffective, or lacking appropriate drama? Does each scene have a purpose? Does each scene need to be in the script? In other words, if you pull a scene out, will it be missed? Does every scene or event occur in the right place in the story? Do events in the script seem to occur randomly without any planning as a whole? Are there plot holes? Do the subplots form an interesting enough story on their own with a beginning, middle, and an end? Do the subplots have obstacles and reversals? How do the subplots relate to the main goal?
Thank you for reading that. So this is, obviously, there's a lot of just sort of straight questions that we're asking here, and these are being framed in terms of questions. Does the script do this? Do the subplots have this and this? And I would say if you're not quite sure how to analyze a script, I mean, I would try taking one of these lists and just going down and like, so when you give your script to the other readers in your group, you'll say, I'm looking to improve these fields. Try to pick fields that are on this guide. So you might say structure, you might say originality, you might say premise, you might say dialogue, you might say character. And then with this coverage guide in hand, when you're evaluating that person's work, just go down and answer all of those questions. You don't have to answer them extensively, just give a few words or like a sentence each. And if you do that for like 2 different categories, you'll have a pretty comprehensive set of notes, depending on how much detail you go into. Let's go into pacing and read that next section down. We won't read this entire guide, but Jason, can you give us pacing?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, good. pacing. Just as a piece of music has a tempo, a good story has a tempo or pace. It keeps the story moving forward. A well-paced screenplay times the major events of the story so that there is a balance between tension and release. Consider the following. Are the major events staggered so that just enough time passes between them for tension to build, but not so much time that the story drags waiting for the next major event to occur? Are major events too close together or too far? Does the story make you want to know what happens next? Are the characters on screen or just the right amount of time appearing with just the right amount of frequency for just the right duration? Do the most important events in the lives of the characters appear on screen? Do characters disappear and reappear at seemingly random intervals without justification or purpose? Does this script drag in places?
Thank you. Okay, so a couple things here. What does this question mean? Do the most important events in the lives of the characters appear on screen?
I think it's the idea that no matter how long, what length of time your script is supposed to cover, there are many things that will happen off screen, and the audience should see the stuff that's kind of the most important moments for those characters and leave the less important stuff to happen in between.
Yeah, that's a fun way of putting it, I would say. And also, it's just sort of speaking to, like, I would say this is a coverage guide for features. So this is specifically applying to features, but generally, in most cases, a movie is about the most important events in a person's life, right? You can think of exceptions, I know. And there are stories like, I don't know, Lady Bird or something like that, where it's like, are these really the defining moments in this girl's life where she's sort of trying to pick which college to go to and dealing with her mom? And like, to me, that sort of genre of low-stakes dramedy don't usually read as necessarily the most important moments in a character's life, but part of the appeal of that genre is that these less huge moments are still pivotal in some kind of way. So, like, I know there's always exceptions to this, but can you guys think of other examples of stories that are, or I guess I should say, can you think of examples of other stories that are not the most important events in character's life and maybe in a character's life and maybe why those work? Just maybe thinking of counterexamples so as to support the main point that most movies are, in fact, the most important events in that person's life. Does anyone have a comment on this?
I think comedies in general tend to follow instances of absurdity more so than importance. Immediately, I think of the 40-Year-Old Virgin, the waxing scene. Mm-hmm. How important was it for us to see a man getting his chest waxed for the first time?
Right. I think that, so in the case of that movie, that's about him really, like, opening up and finding, like, love and allowing himself to connect to other people. So I think like, for instance, the chest waxing scene is, like, part of that journey, right? Where he has to learn to, improve himself and open up to people and let people in and all those things. So I think you're right that comedy, though, does have less of a focus on this is the most important event of this person's life. That movie as a whole, I could see as being a very important, like, series of events that lead up to a big, like, internal change for this guy. And in general, comedy just can work with lower stakes than most other genres. Sometimes the lower the stakes are, the funnier it is. Depending exactly on how it works. But even in terms of feature comedy, usually we're picking the most important events in a character's life. It's not just like a day in the life of this guy and the next day is going to be the same. But then again, there's some stories are kind of like that. Like, I don't know, Linklater movies.
I was just about to say Slacker.
Yeah, exactly. Or
many of his movies aren't really, I mean, I love his films, but they're not really the most important, in anyone's life. They're just moments in somebody's life.
Right, exactly.
Or Clerks.
Clerks, Napoleon Dynamite. These are, it's like a very specific genre that allows you to have movies that are not the most important. Like, we're picking movies of all pretty much the same genre, which are like indie dramedies, which I think was my first example too. I don't know if Slacker's a dramedy or it might just be kind of a comedy. What? Go ahead, Jason.
With like super low budgets.
Yeah, super low budget indie comedies.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lady Bird had more than a super low budget, but like that kind of thing. Part of the appeal of that genre is looking at the little moments that don't matter as much and like sort of finding the ways that they do matter. But like, name another movie, it's almost certainly the most important event in those people's lives.
And you have like these movies with lots of sequels where, in hindsight, like, oh, maybe actually the first movie that was actually not the most, but at the time that was the most important thing in their life,
Yeah, this
up
is
to that point, right?
this is a good point. So this is where you will get sort of this principle gets diluted very easily when you have a bunch of sequels. For instance, like and I guess the expectation should be that each event is sequentially the most important event in that, or like each one is more important than the last one in theory. But like, is Die Hard 3 that much more of a big event than Die Hard 2? I don't know. No, like
It was Die Harder. It was Die Harder.
Die Hard.
So
So so like the first movie on its own reads to me as holy crap, this New York City cop just had the most incredible adventure of his entire lifetime. But then 4 movies later, you're kind of like, wait, he just does this all the time. That wasn't that important at all. So it like, to me, it reduces the importance of the earlier events to have that character just do cool stuff constantly, because by Die Hard 5, it sort of seems like the McClane family just has a curse on it. It doesn't even seem like he's a guy that did an amazing thing one time due to circumstance and his own ingenuity and skills. It seems like he has a curse where no matter wherever he goes, horrible world-shaking terrorist events just happen around him. And it just seems like dark magic has afflicted the McClane clan. So you do get, and in my opinion, it's a weaker series for that. Do you guys see what I mean, or do you agree with me based on the idea that like
definitely
having them have tons of amazing adventures makes the first amazing adventure seem like just one in a series that he does all the time? What? It's just bizarre. Fast and Furious, same sort of idea where it's like or superhero movies have the same sort of idea too, where it's like every single movie is a world-ending apocalyptic event, in which case we're like, we already had the universe at stake. How do you build from that? How do we make it seem like the next threat is greater than the previous one, and that the universe is even more at stake than it was before? So these are things that the multiverse, yeah, exactly. But where do you go from there? So these are problems with sequels mostly. That you don't have to worry as much about if you're just writing one work of fiction. But just remember that like a movie almost in like 97% of cases is it revolves around the most important event in your lead character's life. Any questions about that? And so what would we do if you are reading a script and it's reading like, this doesn't seem that important to the character? What kind of note would you give to respond to that? How would you address that? Stakes are too low for this character. Go ahead. You can unmute if you want, Nacho. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, we want to feel like at least, this character really cares about the outcome, right? So if it's something that's not that big of a deal for them, and fitting with the tone of whatever's been established, maybe that character just needs something more at stake in order for us to really care whether they accomplish it or not. Like there was a script I read where a character was trying to get into an expensive university. And it was like, well, why doesn't he just go to a community college or something? Like, what does he really care about it? Is there something like, is his dream tied up with something he can only do at that university? Or, is there some way to really help us? I think you can almost do this with any story. You can find a way to really make it important to that character.
Yeah, exactly. So you can add more things that the character wants into the goal, or make the goal more desirable for them in some way. You can add more, just pick something else for them to care about, and then threaten that thing if they don't accomplish their goal. You can make the antagonistic force more formidable and like make the bad guys worse, so to speak, which means that if the character fails, then the stakes are higher because the bad guys will do worse stuff, whatever that is. These are good ideas. Let's scroll down to, so we just went over pacing. which is going to be major events are, there's enough time between them for tension to build, or not so much that the story drags waiting for the next major event to occur. Nacho had maybe a little experience with this on his rewrite that he just finished. What happens, or what is the effect of the major events being too close together, Nacho?
So you're not getting. So we're experiencing this through the eyes of the main character, right? So if the main character is just, relentlessly going from, you know, like crazy situation to another one to another one. I mean, there are some kinds of films that can sort of make that work, but you need to help the reader see the main character absorbing like what just happened, right? So for me, that was a big problem in my previous draft. Hopefully, I've improved it in this one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's like it just feels like maybe it's harder for the reader to actually care about that character because they don't seem grounded or believable, maybe.
Yeah, or it can just be kind of exhausting for us to have to go from one high-intensity event to another high-intensity event, then another, without those moments where it doesn't... You're right, it makes the character not seem as real to us if we don't see these things affecting them in a realistic way. There's exceptions to this, sometimes with certain types of characters, like in most of the James Bond movies, for instance. I don't think Bond ever needs that much time to process or react to things that happen between high-intensity action scenes, but sometimes he does. Depending on the movie, depending what they have given for him to care about in that specific movie, like Vesper Lynn or whoever in, Quantum's Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, or like sometimes he'll have like a love interest that he actually gives more of a crap about than the other ones, or sometimes his work will start to actually wear on him, like in Skyfall. Even Bond movies will find these things that the main character needs to process or react to, or like whatever the adventures are in those intense scenes need to like affect him beyond just that scene. That's what makes a person feel realistic. Jason says, T2 basically a long chase scene with very short breather moments. Yeah, there are definitely breather moments though, and there's definitely relationship moments and like really strong arcs with each of the characters. The tracking the change in relationship between the three of them is a really good way to kind of watch those moments unfold in that movie. Who is in that little emoji? Oh, we have an Arnold emoji? How did we get that? That's great. So these things are important. Make sure that the intense sequences are not just chained one after the other after another in a way that feels like we can't never catch a breath. Let me just go over a couple of the other things in this coverage guide. Conflict should ideally be some kind of universal conflict that will permeate the entire story and serve as the engine that drives this story. So we need to make sure the central conflict can be related to by viewers on a primal level independent of time period or culture. The obstacles that the protagonist must overcome provide him or her with sufficient challenge. That means that if things are too easy, it's not going to feel really earned when we get to the later scenes. If the character is just breezing through the entire story, it's not going to be interesting or satisfying to watch. Even in a John Wick movie, we still see him get hurt and knocked down, and we still see him have to reload and have to be clever and strategic, and him, like, the toll of the action, it still takes something from him, even though we do have this sort of conceit in certain genres, like the action and martial arts genres particularly, that if a character doesn't get killed in the fight scene, then they're okay. They're sort of more like, have you guys noticed this? It's sort of more like a video game rules apply to certain martial arts movies, where like the characters won't get tired, they just don't. And between scenes, if they survive a fight, they will be fine for the next one. It's not really part of martial arts movies that the characters will get severe internal injuries or like be bleeding inside or get a concussion or anything like that. It's like if they're still up and fighting, then their imaginary kind of like health bar is still intact, and they do have that kind of video game appeal to them, where we're like, okay, if they can get to the next fight scene, then they can participate in the next fight scene. Then there's not really very many realistic martial arts movies, because in real life, one person can't really fight a bunch of other people. It's just like, you can, and people fight in wars and things, obviously, but like, if you're fighting melee style against 3 opponents, you're probably gonna die. Like, it doesn't really matter who you are. That's just real life, isn't it? So we like fictional stories because they allow us to imagine, oh, but what if, I mean, if you had enough martial arts skills, it sort of makes sense to us that you could just fight 50 guys in a room, for instance. In real life, I don't think literally anyone could fight 50 guys, but in, you know, John Wick or The Raid, they do it all the time. So we have to look at, like, in terms of realism and, like, realistic conflicts, do they make sense as realistic within that genre and within the rules that, and whatever specific rules apply to that genre. And when it comes to challenges, to be making sure to give them the highest level of challenge for your genre that they can still barely overcome. Because we like to watch someone barely overcome challenge after challenge that are getting more and more difficult over the course of the movie. So make sure that you are giving them tough enough challenges that are not overcome too easily. We need to have conflict that lets the reader experience that tension and anticipation and suspense. We shouldn't just leap from important thing to important thing. You have to ramp slowly up to those things sometimes and allow us, you need to delay the gratification of, especially in like a thriller, or mystery, or horror, where we have something to solve or a larger multi-part question that we need to put together, or we need to like figure out what this monster is and how to kill it. You have to be careful with just showing the monster right away. You will detract a lot of the kind of power from the first time that we see it if you just give it to us instantly. So obviously we want to have that tension and anticipation and suspense leading up to your interesting conflict. You have conflict that is both internal and external, because every story can be seen as like 2 interwoven tracks, 2 parallel lines of internal journey and external journey, but they kind of weave and tie in with each other so that by the end they cinch off together in a neat little bow, and both have been resolved simultaneously. In terms of characters, let's have somebody just read this top paragraph here. You don't have to read all that. Consider the following. Whoever read last, we'll just swap to the other one, but go ahead with characters on page 12. Who read last? Was it Jason or Amy?
I can read.
Go ahead.
Okay, on page 12.
Mm-hmm.
Characters.
Mm-hmm.
Characters are the lifeblood of a story. Good characters have arcs, which means they go through a change or realization and are different by the end of the script. Even minor characters can and should have arcs. Effective characters always have more than one dimension to them and shouldn't fall victim to direct categorization. They must seem as real as possible, even if we only see a glimpse of their lives. Consider the following. Do you want me to stop now?
Yeah, there's a bunch here.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
So, they must seem as real as possible, even if we only see a glimpse of their lives. This kind of gets to this idea that I talk about sometimes of characters resemble people, but they are not. They're a separate species than us that that only exist for short windows of time as we glimpse into their fake lives that aren't real. They're fake people that exist in stories that we only see flashes of those fictional lives. So that means that we have to take every opportunity to build out like as much personality and depth to those people as possible in the space that we have. Remember that you might only, if it's a side character, they might only be on screen for a total of like 75 seconds in the entire movie, but every time we see them, we need to learn something about them. We need to kind of make it clear that they have motivations and things that they care about and a life of their own that existed before the story began and will continue to persist after the story is done. So that means that even if you have I used to have in a character presentation this idea of if your character, even a minor character gets stopped and arrested by the police and they force him to empty out his pockets, and you're like, okay, he has a bunch of lint and string in there, or like a few coins. Move on. That's like, you have a great opportunity to tell us a vast amount about a person by just what they keep in their pockets that they don't want anyone else to see. So like, that would be a perfect opportunity for you to pull out, I don't know, a crack pipe or whatever it is. And you know, that's a dark example, but you get the idea that it's like, oh, I didn't know that character was a drug addict, and he clearly didn't want anyone to know that, but that was a great opportunity to reveal that. So like, take every chance you can to reveal things about your characters in non-cliched ways. We used to say, I always say, you know, rings and pictures are usually cheating. So wedding rings and pictures of family and things are often used in a very kind of cheaty sort of way to say like the character, had this family member, or they had this husband or wife, but then they take the picture off the wall or turn it down or something like that. It's like, yeah, maybe people do that sometimes in real life, but it's just been used so much and it's such a shorthand in movies that normally you want to find something else besides a ring or a picture that represents this person's relationship, or like can be used to show that someone's thinking of someone else, or can be used to show what matters to them or what is really important to them. Yeah, there's exceptions to rings and pictures, but I usually say stay away from them and look for other stuff for us to be able to tell who a person is. What would we learn about a person if we see that on their wall they have a row of Employee of the Month badges, and the one on the bottom is like completely worn of its text, and the one above it is like all beaten up, and like we see 9 of these in a stack on their wall framed in their house? What does that tell us? Anybody?
That they've been working for this company for a very long time and they're a great employee, or maybe an overachiever.
Yep. And if it's at their wall at home, does everyone frame achievements from their job at their house?
I guess they're proud of it.
You would think, right? If there's
Yeah.
a stack of 9 of them and they're in a glass frame, that tells us that they love their work, doesn't it? Or that they are at least very proud of it. And you can do all that without saying a single word. Like you can teach us a vast amount about characters by just showing stuff that they have, showing the way that they do things, showing, like, think of the tells that they have. Every time they lie, they do something in particular, or maybe they never lie. Like, there's all kinds of things that you can be using to draw out the specificity of characters, and also just show us things about them. Look at the kind of unusual choices that they make, because that's how people tell us who they are in stories, is by choices that they make. And the best way to showcase what makes a character unique is by having them make unusual choices. So what would it tell us about a character if they always eat every single bite of food off of their plate, no matter what, and scrape it clean? They get, like, every drop of sauce.
Maybe they grew up poor.
Yes, explain.
I know, like, my grandmother, she, lived through the Great Depression, and she was very, like, obsessive about wasting food.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone wasted any food on their plate, she'd get extremely upset. So my mom kind of always would get mad at us, too, about wasting any food, even though we were not in the Great Depression.
Yeah, and obviously she was not in it anymore either, but that had a big impact on her. And I think that you can even in real life see sometimes people who grew up in a lot of poverty get money later in life, become very overweight and very unhealthy, because that never leaves you. The idea that you don't know where the next meal is going to come from is so formative, especially in a child, that you can imagine that I'm sure that your grandma's parents were like, don't waste a single bite of food, right, Jason?
And not even don't waste, but, like, you will be punished if you do.
Yeah, because you need that to live. You need every calorie you can possibly get. So, like, you can see how just by showing a character eat dinner at a restaurant, you can show, oh, they grew up poor. They grew up with nothing. They grew up with a strict childhood with parents who would punish them if they didn't eat every drop of sauce. Like, that's an immense amount of information by just showing how someone does something. So it might kind of require you sometimes to, like, reverse Sherlock Holmes somebody and, like, come up with stuff that you're like, how could I possibly imply that just by things that they do, or by actions they take, or by objects that they have, or by, like, just look for small choices that people make that can bring depth to those characters and, like, show that they have an interesting backstory, and that they feel like that they have been forged by the events in their life up until now. So these are all things that you guys can be looking at in your own rewrites, and while giving notes to other people. Like, you don't have to suggest, maybe you should have this character do this so that we can see that they're this. But, like, you can identify, perhaps, this character doesn't quite feel dimensional enough. It doesn't really feel like this person was shaped by their life up until now. It doesn't really feel real, and I'm wondering, like, maybe come up with some brainstorming suggestions with the writer that you're giving notes to for. I wonder what some ways to build out this person more clearly in the space and the time that we have could be. I mean, we don't have that much space or time, and if it's someone who's not a main character, they might only be in a couple scenes, which means you have to be looking for character details that you can express in just those glimpses, because, like, movies are just glimpses of a lot of people. It's more than it's like a look. It's a hard look at a protagonist and an antagonist and maybe a central relationship. But in a movie, you don't have that much time for side characters. Unless you're doing a full ensemble, which are really tough to do, like you're doing, I don't know, like a Pulp Fiction or You and Me and Everyone We Know, or something like that has multiple characters that have kind of like pretty close to even story weight. I don't recommend those for new writers, and I've only done like 1 or 2 of those, and they're like really tough. But, you know, that just be looking for those brief flashes where you can give us stuff that tells you a lot about a person. I like this exercise, though. I'm going to do ask one more question. Just maybe I should incorporate this more into the character class. What do you think, Nacho? Where we like just say a detail, then construe, like extrapolate what you can from just that detail. Like what might that say about a person? Might be a good thing to add to our character classes. What do you learn about a person if every time they come in their house they tape their car keys to the back of their door? Or they have a bunch of hooks that are like keys, wallet, phone, and they're like lined up right on the back of their door. So they come in and they put everything into its like individual pocket. Anybody? Feel free to type or unmute. I'll bring the chat up. Jason says they are forgetful. Yes, that's possible. What and how do we know that? Or why is that what that tells us?
This is just like a me thing. I'm very forgetful, and if I don't put everything away in exactly the same spot every single time, I'll immediately lose it.
Mm-hmm. This is a good point. So if there's a major plot point in your story where a character forgets something, like let's say, have you guys seen It's a Wonderful Life? You remember the scene where George's business partner misplaces an envelope full of money, and as a result, that's like a major thing that motivates like the entire rest of the story. It's like hugely pivotal. He just misplaces an envelope full of money. If that happens in your story, but that's not set up, do you think that maybe you could go back to an earlier scene with that person and add in a moment where they're putting everything into its pocket on the back of their door? So then we're like, by the time we get to that key plot point of them forgetting something that changes the whole narrative, we're like, I totally saw that coming, and that was set up and motivated, and that feels like I should have been paying more attention to that trait of that person early on. That, like, it would just take one, like, if that felt like it came out of left field, or that it felt too convenient, it's almost always just because you haven't put in too little moments of foreshadowing early on that make that feel plausible. Has anyone seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang by Shane Black?
Yeah.
You have? Okay, so you remember this this scene at the end where Harry Lockhart ends up falling off a bridge, and he grabs onto, like, a coffin with one hand, and a gun slides off it, and he catches the gun with one hand and shoots all the bad guys with it.
Yeah.
Remember that part? Well, it sure is nice, though, that we had that earlier scene where somebody throws a phone to somebody else right past Harry, and he catches it out of the air, and he quickly says something on it before it's taken away from him. And he's like, I'm a magician, we have fast hands. So, like, that setup early on makes it make perfect sense that at the end he could catch a gun out of the air and shoot all the bad guys, because we just had that one moment that we planted, and now it's in the audience's minds, and like there's an in-universe explanation for it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, so just like small setups can motivate later character moments that may feel like they came out of nowhere or weren't motivated, or they weren't they just felt flimsy or too convenient or contrived. You can almost always add things that set those up and make them work. So that's a big rewrite tip. Okay, so 15 minutes left. Let's see what else we have in our slideshow. Maybe we just want to go into the re-outline a little bit. So you got to make a list of every scene in your current script. You will describe in a few sentences exactly what happens in that scene, and you can use a little bit of shorthand, because this is mostly just for you, unless this is for a producer or something. But in this case, you're going to want to just, like, you can use abbreviated characters' names, you can use abbreviated whatever. You can just say, like, F robs the bank, or whatever. And that might be a whole little scene bullet point for you. But you don't have to include the page count for each scene. I actually don't do this myself. If it helps you, then go ahead. Like, you can say, page 1 to 4, F robs the bank, if that is useful. But I myself don't do this anymore. So, to create your re-outline, it's going to require you to open Google Docs. I'm going to take out this thing that says word processor if you really want, actually, because you know what? Let's just use Google Docs. It's just nice to use. And you're going to want to make a new document, and this is going to be called title of the script re-outline. And at the top, you're going to add your title, genre, logline, and comps, which if you realize at this point that they need to change, now is the time to change them. What goes in the re-outline? It's a list of every single scene in your script. Page counts if you want, but it should reflect the existing draft exactly, which means not what you hope it had or not what you wish you had included. Just describe what happens in each scene in one sentence or possibly two if prose format. And you need to be able to share this document with others if needed, but it's primarily just for you. Any questions on the re-outline before we move any further on what that is or how to do that? No questions. Okay, let's keep going.
I have a quick
Go ahead.
question. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I did my re-outline this week for my script, and it was really difficult for me to keep each scene to 2 sentences. How abbreviated do these scenes need to be, or does it matter?
It's for you, so there's not really a limit, but if it's taking more than 2 sentences to sum up each scene, you might have too much stuff going on in those scenes, or you might need to work on summarizing more concisely.
Okay.
Because
All right.
I can't think of any scene that I could not summarize in 2 sentences in any movie.
Okay.
And I would say, if that's something you struggle with, try outlining or look at really good Wikipedia plot summaries. Because Wikipedia plot summaries sometimes are absolute garbage, but every once in a while you'll find one that's like, oh my god, just so well written. I don't know who's even writing these things, but they are like, if I've linked to one and we've gone over it in a class before. I don't think you were there for it, Amy, but let me just link it again if you guys want to take a look at this. The summary for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the 2019 horror movie. It has a phenomenally written just wiki summary that should just emphasize the fact that you can summarize a lot in just a few words. So feel free to take a look at that. And yeah, you should, if it's taking more than 2 sentences, either your scenes are too complex or you need to just be more concise. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Sure. Other questions about the re-outline? Because this is the big assignment for this week. This and read a full-length pro script in your sort of genre type world, whatever. You got to make this re-outline by next weekend. And this week you'll be getting in your group. And are they're reading and responding this week, aren't they, Nacho?
Yeah, so you're reading 2 scripts and creating your own re-outline.
Yes.
And then by next, week, you're going to have some feedback on the scripts that you read for whoever script you read.
Is that clear to everyone? Maybe we should we'll spend our last 5 minutes on groups. Let me just go over a couple more slides first. So do you have the working group document too that you can share in the chat? Because we had a free intro class last week, didn't we, for this? And then I'm sure there were a few tentative signups at that point. Okay, Nacho will link that in the chat in just a moment. But let's just finish these last few slides first. What if my script has major problems? And it might, and it's okay. It might require you to write out your sort of structural beats in the re-outline a little bit, where you're like, this is the catalyst, and you center and bold catalyst or inciting incident. And you center and bold act break. You center and bold midpoint. You don't need to do that by default, but if you do have major structure problems, you might want to make it sort of this bulleted list of the key moments of your protagonist's journey that have been marked out with their structural role a little more, which should just help you examine your entire story at a glance a little better and assess the problems. So here's just a recap of all the story beats. I think if you've been with ScriptCamp for a while, you've seen many of these before, and these are not that different from any other screenwriting book or story structure that you've seen out in the world before. We won't be going into these today, but you can, in all our boot camps we go over these, so just take a look for now. Let's go into the notes document. So you're going to make this one as well. So you need to make it just called name of the script, notes, and at the top of the document add your title, genre, logline, and comps, just to keep yourself on track. And what goes here is this is where you're going to put all the notes that you get from your readers, so that you can choose if you are giving feedback make sure that you're staying in touch with your group, first of all, but that you will be giving them either over the Discord or the Zoom or the phone or whatever, or you'll be giving written notes. If they're going to be written notes, they should be between 1 and 3 pages long, like 1 full page at least. If they're going to be verbal notes, then they should be enough that the person who is receiving them can transcribe out and type out on their own 1 to 3 pages of notes. These should go in chronological order if you can. Look for similarities in the feedback you've received. So at first, you might just write them all out in the order that you get them, which will be kind of all over the place. But afterwards, try to just highlight and arrange those in the order of, oh, this should be at the top because this is closest to the beginning. This is at the bottom because that's closest to the ending. This isn't amazingly important, but just things to be aware of. Always do be looking for the note behind the note like we talked about. And you'll need to decide which notes you want to actually incorporate into your new draft. It might be helpful to go through and highlight in green or yellow or something the things that come up between multiple readers. You won't be doing this for a couple weeks, but this will be when we're rewriting pages, you're actually going to be starting a new blank document from 0. And then as needed, you can copy and paste in scenes from the previous draft that are working. Sometimes they work, and sometimes it's fine to include them just as is. But it's just a little bit psychologically easier to write in new scenes and to modify what you have and to change stuff if you don't have the kind of like all those other pages already there. So we won't get too much into that this week. Just remember notes document and your re-outline. Here's a recap of the steps: re-outline, notes, revision guide, rewrite, extra passes. How do we know when it's done? Ultimately, at the end of the day, there's not one answer. It's done when you think you've addressed every note. You'll send it out again to get another read, and repeat this until the notes you get are you feel they're not improving it anymore. This normally takes sort of 3 to 5 drafts. If you're doing more than 6 or 7 and not being paid, I would say it's usually time to move on. Okay, so let's go to groups. So if you haven't been assigned a group yet, post your title, genre, and log line in the chat, and we will try to put the groups together right now as best we can. So let's see it. What have you guys got? I know we have some horror thrillers, some fantasy comedies, things that will go together well. Anyone who has not posted yet, now please do. Oh, Nacho already has a little group thing set up, I think. So Andrew.
Yeah, I think because
Jay, go ahead.
Just because it's so small, we'll maybe just all be in one group. And Jay Larkin, who was ZZ, is just got disconnected, so I'm not 100% sure if they'll be, continuing. But either way, you'll get at least two full sets of notes, possibly 3 this way.
She said sounds great, so I think she's still in. I would just guess that she got disconnected or had to leave. Okay, well, yeah, this works. And if this sounds good to everyone, then we have our groups already. Awesome. So, yeah, Andrew reads Amy and Larkin. Amy reads Andrew. Jason reads Larkin, Amy. Larkin reads Jason and Andrew. Cool. Everyone's got 2 things to read and 2 people reading them, right? Yeah, if Jason and Andrew and Larkin could just post their title, genre, and logline. I know that Andrew's rewriting his sitcom set in on Melrose Avenue in the 80s about bands. So that might fit into a comedy reader's sort of purview pretty well. But does anyone have any questions about these groups or what? Let's see. Do we have a group for them to be? I guess we're all just group 1 now, aren't we?
Yeah. So we'll use the group 1 or even just this kind of rewrite. I maybe group 1 is better. That way we can not clutter up the chat.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, there is an alumni group. So even after you finish this, you can still and we do have a few people who did the last rewrite class who are, open to giving feedback. So you can post your script in there, and you can also check out some of those scripts and give people feedback on those. And these are all people who've gone through the complete rewrite bootcamp.
Great. All right, let me tag everyone there in the new group 1. That'll be Andrew, Amy, Nacho, Jason, and Larkin. So you've got your groups. You guys know what to do. Re-outline and provide feedback and get ready to take notes on the feedback that you get. That's what you're doing this week. And also ideally read another pro script. Who has questions or things that they're not clear about?
I have a quick question. Where are we posting our scripts? Are we posting it right?
You can post the script in the group
In group one?
Yeah.
Group 1,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
And Larkin says, I'm working till midnight tonight. Is it okay if I hit you with the PDF early tomorrow? Yes, that is fine. So everyone, post your PDF in group 1. Open up save the ones that you're supposed to be reading. And remember, you want to give them at least a page of written bullet-pointed notes, or if you're giving them notes over the phone, enough that they could type out at least a page worth of bullet-pointed notes, up to 3 pages, I would say. Everyone else all set and know what they're doing and know what they're looking for. And everyone, I want you to download that verb coverage guide if you have not already done so you have the questions to look for. And everyone, when you are meeting with your group or talking with them, can say, hey, I'm looking specifically for help with what? Character, structure, originality. And then when you are going through, you can look at that list of questions to ask yourself and use that to help give them the best notes possible. Anyone unclear on any of that?
And just to reiterate, these notes that we're providing, the feedback that we're providing for other scripts, those are due next Saturday?
Yeah,
or before Saturday?
You want to try to get them done this week at some point, just so they have time to write them down and collect it all together if you can. But next Saturday at the latest.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So here's the homework actually written out. Due February 12th. You're going to be, complete the re-outline. Analyze the scripts from fellow Rewrite group members and prepare that feedback and give it to them. Read at least one script from the blacklist or a recent TV pilot, ideally somewhat related to your project if you can. That's what we're doing by next week. Anything else from anyone? All right, I hope this was helpful and useful for you guys, and maybe you can start to figure out the things that you'll be wanting to pay special attention to, or, oh wow, look how much bloom lighting it just adds depending on if I'm blocking the light or not. It's so sensitive. Okay, so you will hopefully have gotten some things to be paying attention to, or some stuff to be making sure that you get to when it comes to either giving or receiving notes on your own story. Things in terms of character or premise that maybe you can start to when you give feedback this week, you can have in the back of your mind to help that person improve with those things and deliver those notes in a way that is, remember, always be cool and kind and constructive, and give, when you can give actionable advice, but you don't have to give them the exact ways to fix the story. Just say, hey, I felt this. I thought this. I wonder how we can this. I wonder is a great way to give notes if you guys don't know. I wonder what are some ways that we can make it more like this is a great way to give a note. So just be respectful, be cool with each other, and people will want to keep working with you. Okay, well, that's going to wrap today's class.